Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this special webinar. I'm Marlise Taylor, and I'm Director of Research for Visit North Carolina. We're really excited to have you here and excited to be doing this webinar for you today. Just a little background, we've been working with Zartico for several years now, and honestly, one of the most exciting parts about working with them has been the ability to create this cooperative opportunity for you, our partners. Our research team has been steadily working over the past several years to bring more research opportunities to you, particularly those of you in counties where it's either difficult to field research or you're limited by funding. So today you're going to hear about some improvements that we're making to your co-op report, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions about the metrics that are provided in those reports. But first, I want to introduce Ashton English to you. Many of you know her via email, but I do want you to see her. And, Ashton has been on our research team for about 2.5 years and really has been invaluable to this cooperative program as well as our whole research program. So I want you to put a face to a name, and she's going to have a few words and she's going to introduce our speakers today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashton English, and I have the pleasure of working with most of you on a monthly basis with our Zartico Partner Program. We hope that you find this data valuable, and we're grateful for each of you. We've received a lot of feedback about changes and enhancements that you would like to see made, so we're excited to share those with you today. I will introduce you to our Zartico team. So these are people I get to work alongside weekly, and Katie Stadius and Lauren from Zartico, and they are going to take it from here and walk you through some of the changes we've made.
Thanks, Ashton. We're very lucky. I've been working with Marlise and Ashton for about 4 years now, Ashton 2.5, and we're very lucky to have such an amazing partnership. Ashton, Marlise are both incredibly smart. So we're going to take you through, just a quick presentation about all the changes that you're going to see. But we are going to just start out with some basics, make sure that we're all on the same page. We understand where the data is coming from and how it's best used. Some housekeeping. There is a Q&A in chat. Lauren and myself, well, mostly Lauren is going to be monitoring that Q&A during so that we can make sure to answer any questions that come up. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to either throw it in the chat or throw it in the Q&A section. Getting started though. Really what's important about your partner cooperative is you're able to see people of impact or where people are coming from, who they are, and how they make an impact on your destination. We call this places of impact, and that's because you really want to think of your destination as a collection of places. People come, they drive in or they fly in no matter how, and they come and they go to specific places in your destination that are mapped. Those can be everything from hotels to restaurants, to attractions, to outdoor activities. These people of impact are making impact on your destination via what we would call the place-based strategy. And so the way to think about this is every destination has a boundary. In many cases, your boundaries are your county or city destinations. Within that, you have your primary points of interest. These are why people visit your destination. Think about it like your stadiums, your venues, your hotels. These are reasons why people are coming to visit. And then you also have all these additional places that people happen to go. We often joke here, nobody travels for an Applebee's, but people do travel for, whether it's Casa Bonita or whatever that one is in Denver, or Pinehurst Golf Course in North Carolina. Like there's all these major things, Disney World, that people actually travel for, and those are the primary purpose of their visits. They still are going to all these secondary categories, which is why they're important, because if we only looked at primary categories, we would only look at, people who are going to your attractions. We wouldn't understand how your residents are moving or how more local visitors are experiencing your destination. So this is just a visual of how you can see it, where you have your primary points of interest and all the secondary or contextuals throughout. When we talk about the data sets that are included in your program, it really is that spending and geolocation data. So taking a step back of what this is, spending data is swipes of your credit card. Card holders like me, like Lauren, like every person on this screen, there are a lot of us. So we actually see about 8 to 9 billion transactions on an annual basis, which allows us to see everything from your swipe at the gas station to your swipe at an attraction or your swipe at a restaurant or a hotel. We do see 4 different types of branded credit cards. So that includes MasterCard, Visa, a little bit of American Express, and Discover. So you do get that swath of both credit and debit, which is really important when you start looking at people's spending trends. Geolocation data has often gotten, a bad rap of it being, creepy or anything of that sort. But really what geolocation data is opt-in, privacy-focused data of when you're allowing your phone or devices or apps on your phone to collect your lat long or your location. We do see about 19 trillion with a T observations, daily visibility, but really what it is it's to give us that insight into where people are going in their destination. So we can see where they're swiping and where they're actually visiting on a lat long basis. Why this is important is location data is really good at some things. It's really not great at others. What it is I always call it the Cotton Eye Joe. It's where do they come from and where do they go? So where is the origin from? What are they? Are they a visitor? Is it a person's traveling from out of county? Is a person traveling from out of state? We get something called a common evening location. I commonly refer to it, it's where your phone sleeps. So we know, when your phone's on that charger consistently for 8 hours a night, we can kind of identify, that's probably your home destination. As that changes, we can start to understand those patterns. But really what this allows us to do is understand where people are coming from and then what they're doing in destinations. So how trends have changed over time. Are more people going to things like outdoor recreation this year than they were last year? Are people more likely to be from Charlotte versus Raleigh? That's really the trending information that location data is best used for. It doesn't tell us anything about intent though. Your phone, it's a very, if you think about your device, it's a very static thing. It doesn't tell about emotions. It also isn't going to tell you things like, oh my goodness, like I live outside Chicago. It's not going to tell you how many times I visit my local bar. Thank goodness. Or, like places that may be a little bit outside of cell coverage. There's just going to be some lapses there, which is why we always recommend to triangulate or use multiple data sets. Because where location data may have some lapses, credit card data is going to cover that. So like credit card data allows us to see where people are physically swiping their card in destination. We're able to see what they're spending their money on. There's these beautiful things that the government, I believe, and credit card companies created called merchant category codes. There's thousands of them, but they range from everything from restaurants to retail of any type, like sporting goods, department stores, big box retail, all these different classifications. So we're able to see just where people are spending their money and then really able to see how it changes over time. So some trends that we see, if you live in a college town, when your college students come in, places that they like to spend their money include fast food, Targets, places like that. And then when Parents Weekend happens, suddenly there's an influx in spend at, nicer restaurants or nicer retail stores. So we can actually see those trends change over time to better illustrate, your summer visitor versus your fall visitor and how they may experience things differently. With the credit card data, though, we really don't see things like, are they spending at a J. Crew outlet or a J. Crew, as an example, or very specific information about where they're spending. Also, if somebody's purchasing ahead of time, so with hotels, if you're booking ahead of time or on Expedia, we're not going to see that data. Just using Expedia as an example, every single transaction in Expedia is coded as the destination of Seattle, where Expedia is headquartered. Airbnb, San Francisco. So there's just things that we will not see in the data. Same thing with cash. We get this asked all the time, like, oh, I said, no, this is a cash only place. Do you see transactions here? Unfortunately, if it's a cash transaction, that's not something we see, but that's where location data comes in and covers those areas where credit card data allows us to see some of the places where you may not actively be on your phone. I'm going to pause here because we're going to get a little bit technical and make sure we're not missing anything in the chat. Lauren, how are we doing on the chat?
We're good. No questions so far.
Good. Okay. Always want to triple check and just do that tap and make sure that we're all not going, Katie, none of that makes sense. Data integrity, though, really important to talk about. Oh, visual, Dana, that's a great question. We are
We're going to get to that.
We're going to get to that. That's actually the next section. We really want to show you where the data is from. We do think this is really important because we work with, over 250 clients. And the first question I've gotten in most boardrooms is, where is this data from and why is it important? And also, why should I trust this data? And so one of the questions that we get asked a lot in terms of trusting the data is, raw data is pretty ugly. If you've ever taken a statistics class or any type of mathematical classes, you know that there's going to be spread, there's going to be some anomaly data. And we actually clean all of that out. It's called normalization. It basically means that if, for instance, a lat long comes in truncated, so latitude and longitude numbers are typically 30 to 50 numbers long. If we only get 5 of them, we're going to place that device in an incorrect location. Oftentimes it's a centroid of your destination, which is oftentimes in like a dog park or a city park or city hall. So we have to clean all of that out to make sure that the data that you are sharing does, represent what's actually happening. And one reminder is that the data is a sample size. So it is that 4% or 1 in 20 that we're seeing. Sample sizes, we're still talking thousands of observations, both cardholders and devices each month. So it does lend itself to volume, which is your friend in situations like this. We're going to get into a few definitions because this is something that we did change in your new report, which we'll be going through shortly. And so historically, a visitor has been defined as somebody who's traveled over 50 miles. We know that gets a little dicey because as a crow flies, 50 miles can take 3 hours in some cases. So what we've changed when you will be looking at your new reports is clearly defining a visitor as somebody outside of your county or city destination. So that means if you are Gaston County, anybody outside of Gaston County in the state of North Carolina is going to be an in-state visitor. Anybody outside of the state of North Carolina still remains that out-of-state visitor. So same thing with spend. You'll see their home location, your destination, your county boundary. The minute we cross over that boundary, you are a visitor. So now we're going to hop into the report. And so we have a sample here. And again, just really calling this out of this visitor definition. It is included in the first section that you will be able to see to make it as easy as possible for you to explain to stakeholders or anybody who has questions. You're going to have the month. It will be through the end of the month, your device sample count. So this is how many devices were seen, both visitors and residents, in your destination during the time frame, as well as that cardholder sample size. The first chart that you're going to see is going to illustrate where the devices are, their common evening location, or where they sleep. So your resident is that in county or that in city, depending on your destination device. In this case, 54% of the devices that were observed during that month were from the county. 32%, or 3 out of 10, 3.5 out of 10, were from in-state but outside of the county. So again, going back to this definition, outside of that county, there's almost 100 counties in North Carolina. This is anybody from North Carolina but outside of the specific county, and then out of state. This is going to represent, that makeup of your destination. It'll give you the idea of, are there more in-county residents that we're observing? Are there more out-of-state or in-state visitors? And something that's easy to track over time, because if you're paying attention to something like out-of-state visitors, what you're able to do is be like, well, there was 30% in the summer and 10% in the winter. That's giving you that understanding of your seasonal trend and seasonal changes. So moving forward, we then wanted to break down your in-state visitors in a more granular way. In-state, there's always challenges. DMAs are really big. They span multiple counties. And so being able to understand which county devices are from and spend is happening from feels really important. So this is specifically looking at the common evening location or the card holders of North Carolina visitors to your destination. So outside your county, but from the state of North Carolina. And you'll be able to see those top 5 counties of both location data and spend data. Things that this will be really great for is understanding, in this case, you can see Mecklenburg at the top, little more location than spend. You're able to see the changes year over year. and just kind of see the order. And you can see something here like Catawba County isn't top 5 of location data, but is of spend. That means these people from Catawba County are spending more than they're visiting from a percentage standpoint. So it just allows you to start understanding that the spending may not come from the same counties that are constantly visiting. It's really important because this, if you are marketing, if you are doing any activations, can give you ideas of places that, may be more local to you, but are outpacing their spend. And it's just a really great way to, identify places that may be more opportunistic for you to talk to about visiting. Out-of-state visitors, we did want to keep the top origin states. So this is something that we held over from the original report. But what it allows you to do is just see those top states. You can see things like South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. Florida obviously has a little bit of spend changes there, but we also break down by DMAs. So we did put a big note here. We know that seeing the Charlotte DMA and saying things like out of state usually doesn't, people are like WTF because, you see Charlotte NC. DMAs tend to cross over states. They do not adhere to state boundaries because they're basically television zones. Charlotte includes about 7 or 8 counties in South Carolina, right across the border. There's a lot of people there. And that's why you'll often see things like Charlotte, North Carolina appear on your out-of-state DMAs. So it's just something really important to note. And so we did include all the DMA names that have out-of-state origins included in their DMA, even if they say North Carolina. Visitor impact is something we also wanted to call out. So moving down, this is an expanded section of what we've provided, the Visit NC team has provided historically. And so what you can see here is you can see percent of visitor devices and spend from visitors. So what this is telling you is of all devices observed, how many are from outside your county, and then you're able to break it down by point of interest category. So in this case, we did want to show you where in-state visitors versus those out-of-state visitors are coming from. So in-state visitors are those out-of-county, in-state devices. And so you can see of your sporting points of interest in this case, 56% of total devices are from visitors. Of those, 44% are from inside the state of North Carolina and 12% are from outside. It allows you to illustrate things like your in-state versus out-of-state impact, because you can see something like education, only 7% come from out-of-state, whereas events, 22%. So it allows you to just see that difference in a very, hopefully, easy way to understand and explain. Same thing with spend here. So 32% of your total spend that we're tracking in your destination, in this case in the county, is from visitors. This is a number that we have seen as one of the most important numbers presented by a majority of our clients when they're talking to their board, because what this indicates essentially is 3 out of every $10 in your county is coming from visitors. So when you think of your tax base, your tax collections, visitors do, in this case, make up about 1/3 of what is being collected. You can see things like accommodations, where almost 93% of the spend that we're seeing comes from visitors. Attractions, 56%, but you can see here out-of-state accounts for 71 versus 25. So again, you can start seeing where your out-of-state visitors are impacting your spend in destination versus your in-state. I'm going to pause here because I know this is a little bit new and just want to make sure that everybody is understanding and feels that we're a place where this is something that you could explain. I'm like monitoring the chat like no one's business.
Questions yet, but if you have them, feel free to drop them in there because sometimes I know the spend data can get a little confusing.
So moving on. Other things that we did want to show is this is basically taking a chart that was, what is the percentage at the end? So what this is percent of in-state, percent of out-of-state, and this is the total. So Dana, what's really nice about this is if you only wanted to report the end number, 93% of spend from accommodations comes from visitors, you have that ability. But you also have the ability to break it down so you can understand what is that in-state share versus that out-of-state share. So the simplest way to think of it, these end numbers are the total. The numbers in between are the breakout. moving forward, we wanted to share just differences of ways that visitors are spending in your destination. And so breaking this down by category. So this is by merchant category. We do, because there are literally thousands of merchant categories, categorize them consistently so that, all of the thousands of hotel brands are in one, so you don't have to look at, 25 different lines here. What this allows you to do is to see in your destination how your in-state visitors, in-state out-of-county versus your out-of-state visitors are spending. Things that this will allow you to simply illustrate is things like accommodations. You can see how 14% or 14 out of $100 that out-of-state visitors are spending in your destination is at accommodations, whereas 2 out of $100 of your in-state visitors are spent at accommodations versus things like gas stations. This just allows you to see, we call it share of spend by category. Share of wallet is another way to look at it. But what you can think of this is if a visitor is $100 in your destination, how are they spending it? And you can see, food, accommodations, gas. Health is places like CVS's or, drugstores. Attractions, nightlife. Nightlife includes bars, wineries, anything that would be classified, self-classified, unfortunately, as nightlife. And then retail includes everything from Walmart and Costco to local retail providers.
I do want to point out here too, which you had mentioned earlier, Katie, but just to reiterate the point that we don't see all accommodation spend. There is a note in the description that we don't see online merchants like Airbnb, Expedia, things of that. So if accommodations sometimes looks low, it's because we're not able to see pre-booked accommodation spend.
Lindsay, you had a great question there. Are the Charlotte DMA numbers the entire DMA or only that fall outside of the state? In this case, it is out of state only. So if you wanted to look at in-state, what you'd be able to see is we know like Mecklenburg County, Cleveland County, those are all part of the Charlotte DMA, but they are in-state. So for when we share the origin markets, so in this case, Charlotte is all out-of-state devices that are within that Charlotte DMA. So out-of-state data is all out-of-state data. It does not include anything in North Carolina.
Question.
Yeah, thanks for all the questions. We really do appreciate it. It really helps us make sure we're hitting what is important to you. We do have the same chart as this so this was spend. This is also then looking at devices. So as Lauren mentioned, we don't see all spend at accommodations. Because, if you book on Expedia, you book through Airbnb, there's so many different ways you pre-book on Hilton.com, runs through Nashville. But this allows you to see visitation by primary category. So you can still see in this case, this purple is out of state. Does over, there are more devices observed at accommodations than in-state or in-state out-of-county visitors. It just allows you to see the spread a little bit differently. And so this is based on the points of interest in your destination where people are observed. It's a great way to see the impact of things like outdoor recreation. I always like to call out outdoor rec because most of the times if you're hiking on a trail, if you're, doing something in the outdoors, you aren't swiping a credit card, which is why you will not see that category in the previous slide. So if you do want to see something like the impact of hiking, biking, etc. on your destination, you look at the visitation by primary category. So what you'll notice in these charts is it is a little bit different than what you've seen historically. There was a few charts that we did take out, and there was a few metrics we did take out. Average spend was one of them. And I do want to call out that specifically because we know it's really confusing to explain average spend when it's $175 and that doesn't even cover a hotel night because cardholder does not equal a person. I always say I have 3 cards, my husband has 2 cards. So for traveling, there's 5 credit cards between us. And unfortunately, due to privacy laws, we can't combine. So we did remove that from reports to help make it easier for you to explain when you're talking to stakeholders. Because based on our conversations with Ashton, Marlise, and we run programs like this with a few of our other clients, is that the most important thing for you is understanding where are people coming from and where are they going in your destination, because that's the highest value that you can get from location and spend data to share with your destination. So I'm going to take a pause here and open it up for any other questions if people have about their current reports, if there's something they're like, I love this, but I want to see this more. You know, we really do want to have those conversations before we get into resources and support. Making sure I'm not missing anything. Perfect. So just so everybody knows, we'll continue to keep open the Q&A as we complete this. And we're always here to support. Mostly though, from a technical support side, Ashton is your human. Ashton and Marlise are both, you know, if you have questions, if you have login issues, not login issues, if you have questions or anything like that that you have about your report, ashton.english@visitnc.com is your best friend. Marlise is always there as well, but Ashton is your human and you are so lucky. We also, on our website, so support.zartico.com, is a knowledge base. It'll have all definitions, everything like that. If you need a quick answer to your question, that's a great place to look as well. And Carol, we love Ashton as well. She is honestly the cream of the crop. So North Carolina, you guys are very lucky. Little more, we do have a knowledge base. This is a QR code. So you will be able to scan it. And as follow-ups, if you ever have questions, so this is the knowledge base, helpful tips and tricks, everything like that. But right now we just want to open it up for questions and I'm going to stop sharing.
Are visitors defined in the county overnight, or does that include day trips as visitors are defined in our data?
That's a great question, Hope. Day trips are defined as visitors in data because what the definition of visitors is derived from is your common evening location. So think about it. I'm going to use me. I live in Cook County, Illinois. The minute I cross over to Lake County, in this case, I would be a visitor. So if I go up there there's Six Flags up there, I would be a visitor even if I'm just there for the day. So it does include overnights and day trippers. A great way to see the impact of overnights is when you look at those percent of observations by location. If you look at it in the category of accommodations, that's a great way to understand the overnight impact on your destination, because if you are observed at an accommodation, 9 out of 10 times you're spending the night.
Good question. Any others? I don't see any.
There's one in the QA specific to rural areas. So rural areas, that's a great question. A lot of times what we get asked is, rural areas, how do I put it? Like, cell phone coverage may not be the best. There's all these different things. The beautiful thing about location data is there are certain apps that will give us data after. So I was just talking with rural Utah, where, if you go outside of Salt Lake City, there's no cell phone reception basically anywhere. We actually do get callbacks. If you're on a trail, we'll get that lat long data later to understand where people go in your destination. Also in rural destinations, what we see a lot of terms of things that you want to watch for is things like percent of spend in gas stations or percent of visitation to accommodations, things like that, because that's going to tell you your overnights versus your day trippers. Because what we've seen a lot in rural counties is a lot of times people are coming in for a few hours and they want to, experience the destination, but they aren't spending that night. So those are two important metrics that we do encourage people to monitor over time and to really push on either increasing in the sense of overnight or accommodation visitation, or decreasing, which is share of spend at gas stations.
Katie, we got another question from Dana. She's asking, a few months back, they saw a top city was Sweetwater, Texas, is a small destination in danger of odd numbers if someone spends a great deal of money.
Yeah, it absolutely is. One thing that we do see, I'm going to use this example. I was looking at the Miami Grand Prix and there was we literally saw a Rolex transaction. It was like $25,000 at a watch store. And we were like, somebody bought a Rolex. They were from, oh my goodness, it was somewhere really weird in California. And it did. So what I like to say with the data is you want to look at it trending. If something like Sweetwater, Texas comes in 1 month, that could be one person, spending a lot of money in your destination there. It doesn't mean they are the most common visitor in your destination. So looking at your continual reports. So, I know you get them monthly. Let's say Sweetwater, Texas is 1 month, but then you consistently see things like Roanoke, Virginia, Roanoke, Roanoke, Roanoke. That's really going to tell you that that is the trend, and that's really, who is coming. We did implement about 4 months ago additional, how do I put it, buffers, so that things like $75,000 prepayments for weddings isn't going to impact your spend data. So that was an implementation that we did, oh my gosh, in June, so that transaction values over 25,000 are currently filtered out, which is where we saw a lot of the challenges like you may have seen in Sweetwater.
We actually had a strategy question from Carol. She's asking, how do we think from a regional standpoint? If I'm in County X and I'm aware of the data from my neighboring counties Y and Z, how can I think strategically about using this data?
So it's a great question. I love this. We work a lot with Buncombe County, and they have the 5 surrounding counties, and it's like, what do we do? So understanding that your surrounding counties are likely going to be your day trippers. So if you have 50% of your in-state visitation from county X, Y, or if you're X, Y, and Z, trying to maybe whittle that number down. There's also a chance that you may not be able to do so, because if you have a shopping hub, or if you have, something that is the draw of your, local destination, you're not going to be able to impact those numbers in a great way. And so what we then would recommend looking at is those counties below. So understanding, are you getting people instead of X or Y and Z, and let's say A is the next closest county. If you're getting B, C, and D, and those are from further out, those are great ways to activate against. Also understanding, county Y and Z, they're likely going to be going to different places than people from other counties. So if you see, let's say Y and Z, I'm going to use December as an example, because December is a month that we do see a high influx in things like retail spend, retail visitation, food, specifically grocery stores, because of the holidays. Look at your December report, look at that compared to a June report to understand December is likely when your local counties or those around your border are going to be more likely visiting you versus June. So understanding that delta can give you that understanding of really where your impact is and what you can't influence. Because I'm sorry, anybody who's like, we can make this huge push during the holidays and draw from outside of about 100 miles. I've spent a lot of time in marketing trying that, and it's a real challenge.
Sorry, I'm giggling here because Dana's question is funny. It says 3 out of the 6 to 8 feeder cities are in Tennessee, which is out of state. We can't for the life of us figure out why. Can we hire us to answer questions? No big deal. I'm a very ugly man. Dana, I don't know what you look like, but I doubt you're a very ugly man. But
And Dana, that's something that we can work with Ashton. It sounds super specific, and I'm not going to be able to pull it up right now and tell you the solution right now. So how about this? Lauren and I will connect with, that's my favorite. I love this chat. Can we come on this every week?
best webinar chat I've ever been on, honestly.
No. But Dana, what we'll do is we'll connect with Ashton and Marlise after and work on a way of getting you a better answer to your question. Tennessee, great place. I know there's a Buc-ee's right over the border. I hear that you guys have the bigger Buc-ee's. Maybe that's a driver. But we'll work with Ashton and Marlise to get a good answer to your question. Also, I love the camaraderie in this chat. I really wish this would translate to everything that we do. Most of the time, people are either not talking to one another or anything else.
Yeah, those two have worked together for many years. So not really surprised to see a little bit of banter, but those are good. Yeah, work spouses, right.
Yes. It looks like Amanda had another question. As part of the Uplift program, I get those data too with 3 other counties. How to best use that data, having multiple counties included together?
Perfect. That's a great question, Amanda, and thanks for calling that out, Ashton. what we've seen a lot with rural counties, again, if collections of them, is the trends are usually fairly similar in all of them, especially the origins of where people are coming from. So the origin data, even if you're one out of those 4 counties, is going to be really helpful for you to understand where people are coming from. I usually like to look at the counties of in-state because that's going to guide you of who who you're drawing in-state. Your out-of-state is going to give you a little bit more detail of who those outer markets are, but that's really what I would focus on. And I think, Amanda, just thinking through situations and questions that you may have, I would ask Ashton and we can, give you a few ideas around more specific use cases of what the data can help provide you specifically, because I do think that we'd want to ask a few follow-up questions that this probably isn't the best platform to do so.
I just want to jump in here real quick. Dana Clark, are you a professor at App State? Is that him? I looked you up. I'm an App State grad, class of 2000. Go Mountaineers.
This is why we love Lauren.
And Carol is academic at App State as well.
Awesome. I was
And
actually
she and I went to grad school together at NC State, so we're all family here.
I actually am I was a business computer major, so I am from the Walker School of Business graduate. So love it. Small world.
That is a really small world. It's really funny because Lauren would tell a story. She's like, she knows places, and I'm going, oh, this is so nice. Between Ashton, Marlise, and Lauren, I'm always like, I know who to call if there's ever anything fun to look at.
Well, I don't see any more questions. As always, Marlise and I are here to support you. So anytime you always have access to us. And we thank you guys for jumping on today, but also partnering with us in this webinar. And this is recorded, so I will share the link to the recording if you couldn't make the meeting or if you want to go back and review it in the future. Hopefully around the 15th when I normally send your monthly reports. But if you have any questions, always happy to answer those. And thank you, Katie and Lauren.
Thank you, Ashton and Marlise, for this.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.